Hi, I'm a recovering addict named Steve. This is the On Life's Terms adaptation of the Narcotics Anonymous book, Sponsorship. Note to the listener, this book frequently changes from narrative to first-person quotes. When the focus changes, you will hear this tone. This installment is Chapter 2, Part 3. Gender. The gender of our sponsor, that is, the question of whether or not we should get a sponsor of the same sex, is another area where opinions vary widely from community to community and addict to addict. Many addicts feel very strongly that a same-sex sponsor can better help them to work through certain issues and can more easily identify with them and feel empathy for them. Others do not see gender as such a determining factor in working through issues or establishing empathy. In some smaller NA communities, the number of potential local sponsors may be limited, influencing members' choices in this regard. Regardless of what we decide about the gender of our sponsor, we should be careful that sexual attraction is not an issue in our sponsorship relationship. I have a loving and caring sponsor of the same sex because I can only share some of the things in my life concerning the opposite sex with someone who can relate. For example, he understands my challenges communicating with my ex-wife. We both have children who live with our ex-wives, and we both have experience trying to make that work. As a gay man, I have had a few different types of sponsors. I have been sponsored by another gay man, a gay woman, a straight man, and a bisexual woman. I believe the gender of my sponsor is only important in the following sense: that one should never be sponsored by someone where any level of sexual or romantic tension exists. I need a woman sponsor not only because of difficulties with sexual attraction infatuation, but mainly to learn to trust, like, and love someone of my gender. That has opened the pathway for me to love, like, and trust myself as a woman. I've always had opposite sex sponsors because when I got clean, the fellowship was just starting in my country, and there were no women in recovery. I think opposite sex sponsorship can work when the only purpose is recovery. My own experience is that I approached a member who I felt physically attracted to with the idea of asking him to be my sponsor. Fortunately, he rejected me and told me that he felt attracted toward me and that he wasn't going to be my sponsor. He told me to look for someone else. I felt very hurt by the rejection. No man had ever rejected me, but that was the first lesson on dignity that I received in the groups of Narcotics Anonymous. When I was new and looking for a sponsor, someone explained to me, recovery is not sexually transmitted. Don't choose someone you could be sexually attracted to. I realized that ever since childhood, men were competitors for attention. In sports, for girls, at work for position, salary, etc. Now I have to see men in a different light. I have to see them as friends and confidants instead of competitors. That took a while, but once I got over that fear of intimacy with a man, my recovery just took off. I think that intimacy is very important for the sponsor-sponsee relationship. When I had 4 months clean, I asked a man to sponsor me. It was my way of rebelling. After all, men and women are all the same, I said to myself. I thought that the suggestion of same-sex sponsorship was only about sex. He wound up borrowing money from me and not paying me back. The clincher was that I found out he never asked his male sponsees to borrow any money. I realized then that men and women manipulate each other in a lot of ways besides sex. What if I can't find an NA sponsor? Sometimes we are unable to find a sponsor right away. Particularly in newer or smaller NA communities, there may be few members with substantial clean time. In such a situation, some members have had to find sponsors in other 12-step fellowships or over the internet, and some have used co-sponsorship, a relationship in which each person sponsors the other to help them with their recovery. Some of these arrangements work out and last for many years. There were no other women with my amount of clean time in my community, so I sought an NA sponsor overseas to work through the steps, traditions, and concepts. When I asked the woman, she identified as having the same problem and suggested co-sponsorship. Since then, we have communicated by email, post, and phone. For now, it's working. Living in a country with a small NA community with no women with more clean time than me, I had to go to another fellowship to find a sponsor. She helped me with the steps and sponsored me for a few years. But I then realized that I was much more involved in working my program than she was. She also stopped going to meetings. I realized I had to find a new sponsor, an NA sponsor, and I started to look to a neighboring country. Most of my communication with my sponsor happens online. We write regularly to one another. Writing gives us time and thought between comments, and it really shows. On the phone, I can't sit and spin for hours in my disease, but writing drives me to be more precise and concise. And we both benefit from having a written record of our conversations. Of course, I get my email service through my job, so it's a mixed blessing. That means my employer also has access to all those conversations with my sponsor. It's important for me to remember that email is not a confidential or anonymous form of communication. There are some things that I simply can't discuss online. Regardless of, in NA, we are taught that the particular qualities or affiliations of our members as individuals have no bearing on their right to membership and their status as recovering addicts. Our basic text explains that anyone can belong to NA regardless of his or her race, religion, sexual identity, age, etc. Nonetheless, some addicts struggle with the question of whether they should consider these kinds of factors when choosing their sponsor. Should they look for someone with similar religious or political beliefs, of a similar ethnicity or socioeconomic status, from a similar culture or background? While some addicts do seek a sponsor who is similar to them in some of these respects, many others have found that such factors are negligible in relation to working a spiritual program, and some, in fact, look for someone who is not like them. I knew my sponsor for 7 years before I asked him for sponsorship. 5 of those 7 years we shared the same sponsor. He had been sponsoring me for a little over a year before I realized he was wealthy. I don't believe I would have asked him had I known his economic status in advance. I am grateful I acknowledged his insides before judging him by his outsides. In my addiction, I was taught to despise all religions and any skin color but my own. In recovery, I was attracted to a sponsor who was a minister. He taught me, by example, that in NA the spirit of anonymity could replace all of my prejudice. My bigotry was replaced with love, patience, and tolerance. My sponsor and I were radically different, culturally and morally. We came from different parts of the country, different religions, and different social classes. So there were a lot of odd little things we just didn't understand about each other. I got to expect and even enjoy the question, is that a cultural difference or a character defect you're acting out on now? We talked a lot about the fourth tradition because being her sponsee didn't mean becoming like her. It meant that she would help me become more and more like myself. Autonomy meant not having to be the same, not having to mistake unity for uniformity. I got clean in the city. My first sponsor's race differed from mine. I didn't see color or neighborhoods. I just remember hurting so bad and struggling not to use drugs, and this addict saying yes when I asked him to sponsor me. As I see it, drugs didn't stop at the boundary of color, so why should my recovery? If I'd waited for a man of the same race to come into the rooms so I could ask him to be my sponsor, I'd be stoned by now. I had to change sponsors because my sponsor was unable to make suggestions to me without the influence of her particular belief in God. As a sponsee, my biggest difficulty was to ask my present North American sponsor to sponsor me. I had to work through my prejudice as well as language and distance barriers. My relationship with him mainly takes place over the internet. I learned that the language of love is stronger than any barrier. How each of us addresses these various differences is neither right nor wrong. It is simply how we, as individual NA members, address those differences. While the spiritual principles of unity and anonymity expressed in the traditions emphasize our common bonds as recovering addicts, we also hold dear the spiritual principle of autonomy, which protects our diversity. In NA, we value our unity, but we do not strive for uniformity. Reaching out. Asking someone to be our sponsor can be daunting. As new members, we might feel intimidated by another member's clean time or feel that we are somehow sicker than others. Our self-esteem may be so low that we believe we do not deserve to have a sponsor. On the other hand, our arrogance and self-righteousness may prevent us from admitting that we even need help, and, as a result, we may resist seeking out another member. Someone else got me my first sponsor. A girl I knew in treatment brought her boyfriend over to me at a meeting. She told me she thought he would be a good sponsor for me. I said okay, and he agreed. That man was my sponsor for 2 years. I was shy and might not have asked on my own. I would have just tried to fit in and faked it. When I first asked my sponsor to sponsor me, I was nervous and wondered if he had the time for me. I looked up to him as the great god of NA. As a result, I felt guilty whenever I asked for some time with him. I finally shared my feelings about the guilt of taking his time. His response was beautiful. Don't you dare take away my right to give back what was given to me. This single sentence did more to bond my sponsor and me than any other event in our relationship. I met my first sponsor at my first meeting. I had 2 days clean, and I was living in an abandoned building. The first guy I asked rejected me. I was very angry and tough in the early days. No one really wanted me around, but I didn't have any other place to go, so I stayed. Eventually, I humbled myself enough to ask someone else. My current sponsor is one of the most important people in my life. He used to be my sponsee brother. That is, we used to have the same sponsor. He and I have been together for 18 years now. Newcomers are not the only ones who struggle with asking someone to be their sponsor. Members who have long-term clean time may balk at the thought of changing sponsors. We may need to get a new sponsor for a number of reasons. As we stay clean and become productive members of society, our lives can change tremendously. After being with the same sponsor for years, we may find ourselves growing in a different direction. Job responsibilities or career opportunities might make it necessary for either our sponsor or ourselves to move away from our present NA community. Family obligations may shorten the time our sponsor can share with us. Our sponsor may become ill, die, or maybe even relapse. Whatever the reason, we may find ourselves without a sponsor and know we have to ask someone. Many members find the idea of getting to know someone again on such an intimate level to be a difficult task. I worked hard to build a new relationship with a new sponsor, even though I was heavily grieving the last one. It's not easy to choose a sponsor under any circumstance, but it can be especially hard after we've been clean a while. I have a much clearer idea of who I am and what I need, or think I need, now than I did when I was new and found my first sponsor. That makes it much harder to remember that I can't sponsor myself. But it has meant that I can work much more consciously on building this new relationship, and that I can deal with problems in the relationship much more quickly and cleanly than I did before. We know we can find acceptance in the NA meetings we attend, but some of us put off reaching out to ask another member to be our sponsor because we fear rejection. We may not want to risk losing that feeling of being part of. Nevertheless, We should not deny ourselves the possibility of being in this rewarding relationship simply because of our fears. With 3 years clean, I found myself stagnating in my recovery. I was not growing, and I felt I needed another woman to guide me through the steps. I was afraid to change my sponsor because I didn't want to lose her friendship. I knew, though, that if I wanted to grow in my recovery, I needed a new sponsor. Today, I'm working the steps and growing in recovery with the guidance of my new sponsor. Regardless of how much time we have in the program, we all look for a sponsor in much the same way. We can start by going to meetings and listening to members. If someone's sharing moves us, we should reach out, get his or her phone number, and start to call. This is a good way to get to know another member. Even if our life seems to be going smoothly at the moment and we do not have any problems to solve, we can also talk to other members to see if they can suggest anyone as a potential sponsor. We do not need to be at the end of our rope to reach out for help. Conventions, workshops, service work, and other NA-related activities also provide a fertile ground for selection. In choosing a sponsor, many of us find it best to trust our intuition, while others will make this decision rationally and analytically. We may also want to consider those addicts who seem to have an interest in our recovery. It is important to remember to take our time. If someone we ask declines, then we keep looking. I asked 5 or 6 men to sponsor me who said no before my first sponsor said yes. I am certain it was a loving God guiding me to the right sponsor. I am a very proud woman, and when the first woman I asked told me that she could not sponsor me, I felt worthless and stupid for asking her in the first place. But I kept asking people. In the end, my persistence paid off. I finally asked a woman who seemed to know how to have relationships and how to belong in NA, because that was what I wanted, and she said yes. I believe that I am the kind of person who values things that are hard to get, and that it was probably important for me to have to work hard to get a sponsor. The other thing that my experience with persistence taught me was how to live life on life's terms. In communities with few NA members, we may need to seek a long-distance sponsor, someone we meet online, through service, at a convention, or through some similar means. Though not all members believe this option will work for them, some of us had success with such relationships, particularly in small NA communities where long-distance sponsorship can be a vital link to the rest of the fellowship. Long-distance sponsorship can also be a solution for incarcerated members or those of us in hospitals or other institutions where face-to-face contact is limited. I met my first sponsor at a regional service meeting, and although she lived over 200 miles away, I wanted what she had and I was willing to go to any lengths to get it. The miles between us made calling difficult at times, but I have a wonderful support system where I live, and we were able to stay in regular contact and work the steps together by meeting at workshops, service committee meetings, and, of course, conventions. We used to call it blacktop recovery. Yes, I admit that there have been times when I would like to meet my sponsor for a cup of coffee at that moment. But I write, use phone numbers, and attend meetings on a regular basis, and I've learned acceptance, patience, responsibility, and too many other gifts to list. The distance just disappears when I hear my sponsor's voice on the other end of the phone. Her experience working and living the steps of NA is what I want from her. The key is to have other women around me, women who can help me live in spiritual principles, love me, and tell me when I need to call my sponsor. This is the end of Chapter 2, Part 3. Sponsorship continues in Chapter 2, Part 4. I'm a recovering addict named Steve. You can download a full PDF version of sponsorship at this address or by following the link in the description below. To purchase a copy of this book or for free literature and to find a meeting in your area or online, go to na.org. That again is na.org. Please help me to carry the message to the addict who still suffers by liking, or commenting on this video and subscribing to this channel. Even more importantly, please share this video with other addicts that we may reach as many as possible. Any feedback or suggestions you might have would be appreciated. I can be reached at onlifestermsvid@gmail.com. Again, that is onlifestermsvid@gmail.com. Thanks again for listening, carrying the message, and keeping the promise alive.